Hello.
Hello.
We're doing the what you can't see. I just had to give us a level playing field.
You don't often give me a little insight into what it is that you want to talk about. So I'm curious to know why you gave me insight.
Oh, I think because I think it's in the nature of the topic, what you can't see, because there was a feel of I didn't realize what I couldn't see, and um there was some hesitation around, well, is it that I can't see it? I didn't know because it was the whole energy of what you can't see. So almost looking for outside validation, which I think is part of the conversation today
Mm.
around there's a lot of conversation around you don't need outside validation. And
Okay.
yet, when you can't see something for yourself, outside validation is often the only way that you get to see it.
Okay. You're gonna have to give me some meat on this bone right now, because right now it's a little naked.
Okay. Where this stemmed from was at the beginning of this week, I was at a convention and I had the intention that I would walk into that convention not knowing anyone, and more importantly, no one would know me.
Hmm.
Now, it was in Adelaide. I have never done any networking in Adelaide. I've been there twice, once personally to do some winery tours, and second time I went was literally 4 weeks ago when it was a fly in, go to a hotel room, be in a board meeting for 2 days, and then fly home. That was it. Didn't see any part of Adelaide. So here I am going to this convention going, I'm not going to know anyone. This is going to be so much fun. I get to walk in, I get to wear the hat that I choose, I get to be exactly who I am. And I met all these fresh people that I've never met before. At the first event, I was just standing there innocently chatting to people that I've never met before. And somebody went, Chris, I didn't know you were going to be here. And I turned around, I went, I didn't know you were going to be here. So immediately there was somebody there that I knew. And that was just one incident. And then the following morning, I walked through into their big exhibition center and they had about maybe about 30 vendors there. It's a typical convention type setup where they're selling their wares, and they want you to
What
sign
kind of
up to
book?
everything and all of that. And I walk up to the first one, and this woman goes, Oh, Chris, I remember the first time I met you. I was like, wow, actually, I do remember that particular event. I didn't remember her name, but I remembered the story around meeting her. And then I went to the next vendor and the same thing happened.
Hmm.
And this woman said, Oh, I saw you get on the plane in Brisbane. We were on the same flight down, and I thought it was you, but I wasn't sure if you were coming to this convention, so I didn't say hi. But hi, great to see you again, Chris. It's been about 7 years. Oh, and I've been watching you on LinkedIn, and I love what it is you do. And I'm like, it really highlighted this. I didn't know that these people had any idea who I was. I
Hmm.
really had this intention of going in and fairly anonymously, and yet immediately the initial intention got shifted to people can see me, can see what it is I'm
Hmm.
doing. And it made me pay attention to that for the last 7 years. It's actually been really important what it is I put out, how it is I show up. Um, and you just never know what others can see in you. So that was where this idea around kind of what others see, what is it that I see, and those further conversations then led to a bit of, oh, I see how much you've expanded on what you do, and there's been so much change, all that sort of stuff. And I just go, oh, I feel like I'm still doing the same thing that I was doing 7 years ago, but others are seeing it differently.
Now, when you look at that, can you see the expansion that from their perspective?
Sort of, but not completely. And I think this is part of um, like leaning into their what they see, but also not fully. I don't know. I don't know. I just I do what I do, and then others see it for whatever it is they see it as. But it's really interesting when you get that direct reflection back to say, I've seen you do this, 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 and this, and really to start to pay attention to what others see.
Hmm.
Um, but then I come back to this whole validation thing. I say that, but I pause because what others see is not really my business
Right.
because they're seeing it through their own filters and perception and their journey and all the rest of it. And that's for them. What they see doesn't necessarily validate me, but also there's a level of recognition of what others might be seeing. And maybe that's a piece that I've missed seeing in myself, and it would be worth paying attention a little bit. So
What,
this is what this was about. Just this whole, I feel like it's a little bit of a ball of wool that's kind of all intertwined
yeah,
in what you can't see.
I'm trying to like there seems like you're right. There's a lot of threads there to be pulled. Is there one in particular that you think would be helpful for people to understand?
Well, I after coming like so I realized that what happened is that I kind of got boosted in that moment of oh, someone actually recognized me. And then I immediately went into, but I wanted to be anonymous and nobody to know anything so that I could just show up. So that was a bit of a thing for me. Um, so I don't know what the thread is. I just thought it was a really interesting experience. I also had another experience that did also lean into this what you can't see. I went down there on my own. I had to put my big girl pants on and do everything and tackle everything all on my own, which is never pleasant for me. Um, and I had to, so I arrived early. I had about 5 hours before the first event, and so I went for a walk. Now, Adelaide is the central business district is quite small in comparison to most cities in the world. Um, and they have this really long shopping mall. When I say long, it's like 5 blocks long.
Well,
It
okay.
goes forever. And I went, I'm going to go walk down the mall. Okay, then. Didn't realize how long it was. Um, Went for a wander, but what it did is it allowed me to get my bearings a little bit about where I was staying and where that mall was and where the convention was being held, and kind of got my bearings a little. And I I just wanted to have something to eat, and I wanted someone to just bring me a plate of food. I didn't want to go to an eatery like, or can I just have 3 pieces of sushi and off I go? I didn't want it that kind of thing. I wanted to sit down at a cafe, and I found a cafe. It was kind of up the mall and down that arcade and halfway down, and no one else is there. But I went, oh, it feels all right to me. I'll just have that. And I was sitting there going, wow, I I know I've had to be independent and get here and do all this stuff on my own, but maybe what I wasn't seeing was how brave I was and the courage I was expressing, and feeling. like I didn't recognize it in the moment that I was being courageous and doing lots of bravery. I was just so hungry, I just wanted to eat. I had the best experience at this cafe. They were very helpful. They let me plug in my phone because it had no charge. And it was just this, I was in this moment of, oh, please just feed me and give me, like, charge me and charge my phone. That would be lovely. But what I didn't see in the moment was the bravery and the courage that it took to not only walk to somewhere that I'd never gone before, didn't know where I was going. There was a lot of unknowns, and I was looked after.
Did somebody show you something that made you think that? Or, because I'm kind of curious as to where you had the realization that you know you had to step into this.
So the realization was when I got back to the hotel and I rang my husband because now I had charge of my phone, right? And said, "Oh wow, I just did this thing. I went for a walk and I found a cafe and I didn't know what it was going to be like and I did it anyway. And it was really cool." I was like, "Ah, if I can do that to an unknown cafe, okay, so now I've got the strength to do that for finding where the convention's going to be and getting there on time and ordering an Uber if I need to, or just walking an extra 20 minutes because that might be what it takes, or whatever the unknown was." Actually, a reminder that I could do the unknown.
Mm.
So that was another example for me around sometimes in the moment I can't see what's going on because I'm in the middle of the feel and not actually in the observation.
I think that's where I was going, where I was taking it when I was sat down and thought about this topic for a few minutes today was the you can't see yourself in action, right? You think you know what you look like, you think you know what you're doing, but when you have either a video camera on you or somebody who's actually observing you from the outside, they have a perspective that you don't have, where you can't see it. And like I remember when I used to play golf, when I used to like I was trying to be like good at it, right? And I hired a coach, and the coach is like,
Isn't
yeah,
that
you
an
got to.
oxymoron with golf? I thought golf was one of those things that you could be good at one weekend and then the next weekend maybe not.
Oh yeah, you could be absolute trash. That's entirely possible. However, with consistency and practice, you can be pretty similar more often than not. Okay. But I remember when I first started taking lessons, you'd be telling you to do this, and you'd be like, I am doing this. And they're like, no, you're not. And then they'd set up a camera, or they would set up a mirror behind you or something, and you'd be like, oh, that's what I'm doing. Oh, I didn't. It doesn't feel like that's what I'm doing. I feel like I'm doing what you're asking me to do, but you're not. So having that outside perspective is super supportive in and trusting that they have an eye that you don't, to see what you're doing so that you can make the corrections. And then when they like physically put you in position, you go, this is where what this is supposed to feel like, and this is where your hands go. You're like, oh, that seems like really far. And he's like, well, not really, but it's further than you were going. So that outside perspective in so many different avenues is really, really critical. Uh, and this week, over the past week or so, I've had this experience where um, I was delivering a couple of workshops with some colleagues of mine, and I felt like um, the first one was kind of clunky from my perspective for me, and then the second one I felt like I was kind of in the flow, and then the third one was kind of clunky again for different reasons, and uh my wife attended the third one and she's like, you were great, like you're like a rock star. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, you know. And then when I brought it up to my partner this morning when we were talking about the next one we're going to do, she's like, you're fantastic. I don't know what you're doing, like what you're saying. Yeah, I didn't see any of the things that you just described to me where you felt like you were unstable. And I said, well, you know, I can't see myself in action. And I actually felt like I was having like not an outer body experience, but because I was so much in my head, I wasn't able to realize or be completely present with what I was doing. So even if I was going maybe on autopilot a little bit, and maybe other people didn't see it, I felt it inside me that I wasn't there.
In the moment, being present, doing all the,
Yeah, like my
yep.
mind was el my mind was elsewhere, and even though I was doing the thing, but apparently it came off just fine. Um, so getting an outside perspective, getting some kind of validation that you weren't, totally off the mark. Yes, I wasn't present. Yes, that's something I need to work on, but it didn't come off as being, bad or weird or um, uh,
Out of
not,
place or
yeah,
not
not
right
cogent or
or,
whatever, right? So
yep, yep.
yeah, so that's where I went is having outside perspective to give you something that you can't see, and sometimes to even correct where you're going because we're often so much harder on ourselves than we are on anybody else. Um, Even a bad golf game for me is like rock star status for somebody else. So like, holy crap, how do you do what you do? And I'm like, yeah, I had like 10 bad shots today. Like 10 bad shots, I'd pay like money to have 10 bad shots in a day or whatever. So it's all perspective and getting outside of yourself.
Yeah, and I I mean, it was n nice to see the validation, but I also experienced the self-validation. It
Mhm.
wasn't just other people uh, giving the validation to boost the ego. It was actually that self-recognition that I had actually achieved some things in both the stories, right? I've achieved some things in the last 7 years. I've achieved some things on that one walk to a cafe all on my own. It sounds almost silly, but when I'm in a foreign city and going and sitting in a cafe, I don't know what the cafe is going to be like. Like it's just all a bit and and to get that to have the self-validation that, oh, actually I yeah, I achieved that. I have achieved those things. To just do that self-validation is seemed needed or was delivered in the right amount.
Mhm.
And I wonder if we are always in a position where we can actually hear that validation or see it. It would have been very easy for me to dismiss both of those circumstances. Having someone recognize what it is, the difference that they've seen in me in the last 7 years and how it's growing and amazing and all those sorts of things. I could have easily dismissed that. I could have easily dismissed my courage and bravery to walk somewhere foreign.
I think that's super common. It's like we're walking around with blinders on all the time because you're so singularly focused on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And you don't necessarily see the things that are going on around you. So this conference weekend or whatever feels a little bit like the blinders were off. I get to be me this weekend. I don't have to put on any airs and try to do anything cool. And then people are like, I know you. I know you. I've experienced your stuff. This is so cool. So now you're open and it came in. You weren't like this.
Yes. So maybe that's interesting, isn't it? So I'd already opened myself to just go, well, I'm me. I'm walking in, get to know me. Oh, I already know you. Oh, no.
I was curious to know if it changed the way you showed up after you realized, oh, some people know me here.
Yeah, I think the only thing that changed, uh, I think it added to my thought processes, but it didn't really change how I showed up.
Okay.
I think what added what I invited in and allowed to add to my thought processes was actually gave me a little bit more confidence in that maybe I know what I'm talking about. And when I experienced some of the events within the conference itself and had an opinion on it, I was less hesitant in expressing what I actually had experienced
Mhm.
because almost been given permission to say, oh, yeah, you've been around a bit, you've seen these things, you know what you're looking for, you know what you're talking about. And there were some people that I was in conversation with that had never experienced, this is their first ever convention, that kind of thing. And so it added to my confidence
Mhm.
that I had the voice of experience. I think that's what it did. But I didn't show up any differently, really. I, it actually, the only other aspect that it gave me was a bit of comfort so that I could walk in the next day and say hi to these people and feel like I knew them already.
Mhm.
So that, again, it it impacted my confidence in um, almost in that credibility type of field
Mm. Okay.
um, in that environment. What it did in the other environment, like the other story, how that impacted me was when we had to get from one end of the central business district to the other to go to one of the evening events. I wasn't hesitant in how I was going to get there. I went, right, I've got this. If I can walk however many kilometers it was up the mall and find a cafe, I'm sure I can get to this event, right? And then even the getting home at 9 o'clock. Well, I didn't know I got dropped off and I had to still do a 20-minute walk to get to the actual venue. And I was like, well, I don't even know if I have to do that 20-minute walk back or there'll be a shorter version where I could just go up this way and then get back to the hotel. But I didn't let it phase me. It didn't run through my head like a worry and running scenarios and trying to work it out and will I be okay? And I'm in a foreign, like all of that stuff wasn't playing on my mind because I had that other experience and recognition that I had the courage and the bravery to do it.
And it's helpful to get a couple of reps under your belt, right? And maybe it was helpful that the first walk, you didn't have like time schedules or a stamp that you had to be somewhere at a certain time. So you could stumble your way into a cafe midway and see what happens. And then the next time, okay, now I've got some of this under my, I've done this before. Okay, I can add a step to this and I can add a deadline to it and I can get there on time. And it's baby
Yes.
steps, baby steps.
Yeah. And I think part of the equation, though, is that recognition so that you don't keep the blinkers on, right? If I didn't have the awareness that this actually took bravery and courage and that I now have that available to me, I don't know that I would have felt as confident going into finding the venue on the second night. Um, so this ability to recognize what it is that all of the aspects rather than just the blinkered, I was hungry and I needed my phone charged and that's all I needed. Um, Actually recognizing what was happening in that moment really helped feed everything else.
Do you think this will change the way that you uh, view getting other people's perspectives? Like not having to go in blind and necessarily like ask people for more information to give them their view of you or what you're providing or whatever.
Oh, yes. Yes, that was another random thought that occurred to me about actually being that confident slash feeling a little more credible or a little more experienced allows me to lean into learning more from what others see because I'm less worried about what they think,
Hmm.
more interested about what that perception is, and not whether I'm meeting their perception, but just plainly curious.
And I think that's the key, right? It's um, not needing them to like what you do for it to be of value and it to affect your own self worth of it, but just to get the information from an alternate perspective so that you can do something with it if you choose.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
for me, that it reminds me of getting feedback, right? Everybody's got it, right? Everyone gives it. It may not be warranted, it may not be nice, it may not be lots of things, but if you receive feedback and decide for yourself if it's a value, if it serves you, if you want to use it, it can be super valuable. I don't know if have we ever talked about feedback in particular?
Oh, I reckon we would have touched on it, but maybe not as a topic heading.
There was one time that I got feedback for something many, many years ago in my little earlier days of coaching. And she gave me, I don't know, it's like 2 or 3 pages front and back of me taking notes of feedback. And it was the kind of feedback, it's like, can I give you some feedback? Here we go. I'm like, okay. So I took notes. I just took notes. And then when we were done, I said thank you and hung up, essentially. It was probably through a computer, but I hung up anyways. And there was lots there. And I know a lot of it was their baggage and their view of what I had done. But there were a couple of nuggets in there that were of value that I said, yeah, that piece I'll take, and that I will use for me going forward to serve me in being better at what I did and what I'm going to do. But it's my choice. I don't have to own the emotional distress or whatever was going on the other side of that. But there were some really good ones that I thought for me, yes, I can grow from those and I'll use them.
Yeah, and that's always my intention when I give feedback and when I receive feedback is somebody's cared enough to actually bother to say something. So there's something in there. There's a nugget in there that's going to be really valuable. There's going to be a little bit of white noise as well, but there's going to be something that can be used and improved.
Mhm.
And that's always, it can be hard to find though, because we get caught up in the
Volume of it.
volume. Yes, that's it. That would be a good way to describe it. And um, I gave feedback for this convention, and I don't know what volume they're going to hear that at. However, to try and soften the volume, I've also said, here are my contact details. I mean, normally these sort of feedback forms can be often anonymous.
Mhm.
I deliberately didn't make it anonymous. I put my contact details in there so that if they really wanted to have further conversations about what could be done differently or how maybe we could work with them or I don't know, something, that would be, they've got that opportunity.
Mhm.
And sometimes I think that feedback that comes through almost blindly, like where
The
there's
anonymous,
no,
the anonymous version.
yeah, no right of reply or no, it can be a bit harsh. It can be a bit, well, who said that? Who are you to say that kind of feel? Where I think feedback that is not unsolicited is, like you said, the volume is probably at a more reasonable level.
And, and because you can't, feedback's an interesting topic on its own, but if you don't get feedback, sometimes you don't know that something's wrong, right? So you have your own blind spots on things. I remember the last time we went out to dinner with the family. I remember I ordered something, I tried something new. I never order anything new, but I ordered something new and it didn't turn out well. It was like cold on the inside and it
Oh,
didn't feel cooked properly, whatever. And I ate a good chunk of it anyways, and I left a big chunk as well. And then when they asked if everything was great, I said, not really. But I'm not upset about it, and it wasn't bad enough to return it. But I would recommend maybe in the future, maybe can make some changes. Told them what I saw and like stuck to the facts, and then they can do with it whatever they want. And I wasn't intending on getting like a refund or whatever. That wasn't my goal. I made a bad choice. I owned it. But if you don't speak up sometimes, then nothing will change. So then the blinders stay on and everyone thinks that their cook is doing a great job. So, um, yeah, it's valuable to get other people's perspectives. And I think it's great though if there's an intention behind it that is like caring.
And then it's up to you to do with it what you need to do with it. Yeah. And hopefully my maybe hopefully I can see more of what it is that I do due to, I mean, really, it was feedback that I got.
Hmm.
And maybe I can see more as I move forward and see more about what it is I do, whether it's through courage and bravery or it's
It's a whole new world.
a whole new world. There's a song in that.
It's a whole new world. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, excellent.
Thanks,
Well, there
Brie.
you go. What you can't see is often what you need to see.